I begin with a dangerous test, and I must speak it plainly. If the word God is still in your mind as a thing to hold, a thing to repeat, a thing to grasp, then you are still in your mind. I cannot permit a word to stand between me and reality. Therefore, I must strip it. I cannot allow a three-letter symbol to veil the infinite. Therefore, I lay it down. I cannot worship a sound or a syllable. Therefore, I surrender it. I stand here, the porter at the door of thought, and I refuse admittance to any idol, even a sacred one, made of letters and the breath that pushes them. Do you see that I am not being irreverent? Watch carefully. This is not the denial of God. It is the denial of a thought about God. This is not atheism. It is fidelity. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. I cannot set a word before the living presence. I cannot kneel to a concept and call it devotion. A word about God is not God. A definition of light is not light. I must not confuse the map for the country, the picture for the face, the echo for the voice. Therefore, I assume conscious dominion over my temple. I say to my own mind, be still. I will not be hypnotized by a holy syllable. Be still and know that I am God. Not think that I am. No. Now I warn you gently but firmly. The human tendency is to clutch the very word that once led us forward, and then that word becomes a veil. The mind whispers, repeat it louder, polish it brighter, frame it in gold, and the heart goes hungry while the head grows noisy. I cannot permit that. I will not allow my prayers to be a museum of beautiful terms. I must pass beyond the gallery into the living presence, where no description can follow and no argument can intrude. Understand my intent. Scripture remains my witness, not my crutch. I do not discard the scroll. I obey its spirit. When Moses heard, I am that I am, he did not receive a theory. He received identity, presence, command. When the psalmist sang, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, he was not reciting geography. He was resting in an all-pervading being that cannot be boxed into language. Therefore, I say to you, and I say to myself, words may point, but only silence can deliver. Names may guide, but only naked awareness can reveal. I promise you something, and I must speak it soberly. There is one final word you cannot remove, and we will come to it. Not to inflate an ego, not to arm a swashbuckling self, a gentle word, a primordial word. When all other names are laid down, it remains not as thought, but as being, and the end of seeking begins there. In this hour, I set your expectation. We will not be left in abstraction. We will practice. We will prove. We will know by evidence, not by debate. The evidence? Quiet. A softening in the chest. A breath that no longer hurries to justify itself. A stillness that does not argue its case. When your breathing slows. When your mind is not running but resting. When you find that you are aware without thinking about awareness, then you will see why I have insisted. Do not let a word block the door to the wordless. So I take my stand. I stand as the tiler over my mind and my body. Nothing shall enter that defileth, not even a sanctified concept if it sets itself up as a substitute. I must maintain my God-given dominion. I must keep the gate. I must Behold the living presence that is nearer than my own breath. And as I do, the syllables fall away like husks, and the kernel of reality begins to feed me. This is the test. This is the beginning. Put the word aside for a moment and dare to be still. Then we shall proceed to that last word you cannot remove, and the seeker will find the road has ended in home. Now I must tell you why those 3 letters become a veil. The human mind is a fabricator. It must make an image, a definition, a doctrine, a memory. It takes infinity and forges a token. It carves in syllables what cannot be carved, and then it bows to its own construction. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. Do you think that commandment spoke only of stone and gold? No. The subtler idol is etched in thought. The sharper chisel is the intellect. We coin 3 letters and call it God, and the mind immediately begins to handle it, polish it, argue for it, defend it, and the living fire is smothered beneath a shrine of ideas. Now, do you remember that I say God is not? No. I said your thought of God is not God. I said the word about God is not God. The letter killeth, but the spirit giveth life. The letter can be beautifully illuminated, framed, recited, but it is still a letter, and the mind can stroke it like a worry bead for 40 years without one instant of contact. The mind is content to substitute its echo for the voice, its portrait for the presence, its theology for the life, in whom we live and move and have our being. And because the mind loves its handiwork, even our reverent synonyms fall into the same trap. Spirit, presence, love, truth. I honor the realities to which they point, but the mind lifts up the words like banners, marches them in parade, and never once enters the country they name. We whisper, spirit, as if breath could bind the boundless. We repeat presence as if proximity could be fashioned by sound. We affirm love and truth until the throat is dry, and often the heart remains untouched because the mind is communing with its own vocabulary. Hear me. If the mind can repeat it without quieting, if it can display it without yielding, if it can argue it without softening, then the mind has enthroned a token and is bowing to itself. What is the cost of this? The seeker keeps seeking. Why? Because the distance remains. The mind chases a better concept, a purer doctrine, a stronger feeling, a brighter experience, and it is all mind-to-mind commerce. We collect fresher definitions, we polish more sacred adjectives, we become connoisseurs of holy language, and still we wake hungry because concepts cannot feed the soul. God is spirit, and they that worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. Do you hear? Must worship in spirit, not in syllables, in truth, not in the idea of truth. I speak this as one who has been guilty. I had my long periods of practice in which a beautiful phrase tried to become my talisman. Sometimes it still tries to. It slips in, puts on a halo, and says, cling to me. I must snap out of it. I must say gently but firmly, letter, step aside. Spirit, reveal thyself. I stand as the porter at the door of thought. Nothing shall enter that defileth, not even a sanctified word if it dares to usurp the throne. I cannot permit the mind to serve me its painted bread and call it manna. I cannot allow the echo to impersonate the voice. Therefore, to end seeking, I must go where the mind cannot follow. How? By stripping. I take each word, even the most beloved, and lay it on the altar. God, spirit, presence, love, truth. I lay them down, not in contempt, but in obedience to be still and know. As I surrender each synonym, the mind loses a handle, a perch, a wheel to spin. Quiet begins. Awareness unveils itself when no definition can stand. And when every sacred concept has been offered up, only the irreducible remains no longer as a thought in the head, but as being itself. We will come to that gentle word. For now, see the diagnosis clearly. A word about God is not God. It is the mind substituting a concept for awareness. Lay it down and prepare to enter where words cannot go. Now we practice. I will not leave this as a theory you admire and then shelve. I must take you through the gate. I stand as the porter at the door of thought, and I begin to clear the threshold. First, the most adorned token, God. Gently, I lay it down, not the reality, not the presence, but the three-letter banner. I let the syllable fall away, and I do not rush to replace it. Be still and know. I let stillness have its first sip of authority. Immediately the mind protests, then bargains. Very well, it says, I shall hold to spirit. Spirit must be safe. No, spirit is a 5-letter handle. I must surrender even that. I lay it down. I will not let the head pretend to worship the infinite by clutching a longer word. When ye pray, enter into thy closet, and in that closet there is no placard on the wall, only quiet, and the one who seeth in secret. Now the mind reaches for life. Surely I must keep life. I cannot. Not the actuality of living, but the label life as a concept. I remove it. Then love. With trembling hands, I take even love as a word and set it on the altar. Do you think I am profaning love? No, I am refusing to confine it to a sound. I am obeying. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Truth, down. Power, down. Presence, omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence. Each one is a glittering ring through which the intellect likes to toss its performances. I will not be a juggler in the temple. One by one, I strip them, and after each surrender, I do not immediately grab another. I taste the space that opens. I allow a small pause. I notice that I remain. Now let me tell you why. I am not creating a vacuum to worship a vacuum. I am cleaning the lens. I am washing the window so that what is already here may be seen as it is. Early in our journey, those uplifting terms are training wheels. They steadied us. They rolled us forward. They kept us from despair. I honor them for carrying us across the beginner's field. But there comes a later step in which even the training wheels must be removed, or you will never feel the balance that was always yours. Take no thought for your life is not an order to neglect. It is an order to release the mind's grasp and discover the secret governance already at work. Watch the mind as we do this. It fidgets. It rummages for a sacred substitute. It says, if not God, then spirit. If not spirit, then love. If not love, then truth. And when those are all laid down, it will try to crown silence itself as a concept and sit upon that throne. I must not allow it. Silence is not a slogan. Silence is the atmosphere in which the unnameable reveals itself. I must maintain my dominion here. I must refuse entrance to the next glittering word, even a holy one, because the letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life. The letter about silence also kills. Only the being of silence reveals. And now pay attention to the evidence that this is working. When you strip a term and do not replace it, your breathing softens, the pulse in the temple quiets, your attention ceases to chase and begins to rest. Do not call this emptiness. Call it clearing. Call it the door opening from within. For as you continue, you come to a brink. You discover that when every sacred label is offered up, something remains, something you cannot lay down, because it is not an object of thought at all. It is the sheer fact that you are aware, not the phrase awareness, not the thought of being. This is the pivot. The seeker in you is used to reaching outward with a word and returning with an echo. Now there is no word, therefore there is no echo. There is only this irreducible remainder that refuses to be removed because it is what looks through every removal. Do you see? The kingdom of God is within you, not within a syllable, not within a doctrine. I then stand wordless, and I notice that this remainder is simple, immediate, and closer than any idea. Here before the next thought can dress itself, here beneath the language of the head. I promise you we will not leave it in abstraction. We will locate this remainder, not in the head that invents names, but where it rises before thought. We will find it nearer than breathing, rising out of the chest in a gentle yes to being. For now, hold your post, keep the door, lay each synonym down, let the pauses widen, let the lens be clear, and behold that when everything thinkable is surrendered, what remains is the very one by whom you know you are. Now we come to the final word you cannot remove. There is one syllable that survives every altar, one sound that refuses to be laid down because it is the very one that lays things down. Even to deny it, you must say, I deny. Even to doubt it, you must think, I doubt. Even to object, you must begin, I object. Do you see that we have arrived not at a concept, but at the irreducible fact that knows concepts and releases them? I is not a thought. I is that by which thoughts are known. I am that I am, not as an opinion, not as a theology, but as the naked actuality of being itself. Now hear me, and hear me carefully, for here many go astray. I do not speak of the personal me, my name, my history, my little triumphs, my sad defeats. Never do get I and the biography mixed up. The personal self is an appearance in time. It is the robe. It is a garment worn for a season. I am the life of that garment. I am the one to whom the biography appears. I am not the age in the passport, not the letters after a name, not the bruises remembered by the mind. Before Abraham was, I am. Can you feel the difference? Time belongs to the story. I belongs to being. Therefore, I must insist upon this safeguard. It must be a gentle I, not an egotistical I, not a swashbuckling I that struts down the street shouting metaphysical slogans. Put up thy sword. I do not arm the ego with divine phrases. I disarm it. I am not permitting the personal self to seize God talk and make parades of it. I am acknowledging the universal self that breathes both saint and stranger, the I that is the light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. When Paul confessed, nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. Do you think he spoke of a private boast? No. He confessed a displacement. The personal I yielded to the universal I, that is Christ. the life of all living. Let me state it plainly. The one I is the only self there is, and because there is only one self, I am thyself, and thou art myself in truth. Now, do you remember that I did not say my oneness with God as though two became friendly? My conscious oneness with God, which is to say, the realizing of the one I as my being. This is the heart. Do not make a division and then try to repair it with devotions. There is not a personal I and a divine I at war. There is the one I glimpsed dimly as a person and then revealed as the life of all. The person is the lens. I am the light through it. The lens may be smudged, cracked, tinted by culture or pain, but the light is intact, and the light is I. I then am not the thinker of noisy thoughts, but the awareness in which noisy thoughts arise and fall. I then am not the doer of anxious deeds, but the still presence in which doing appears. I then am the bread of life to my own being, the resurrection of dead hopes, the gentleness that removes all swashbuckling. And because I am universal, there is no my good over against thy good. There is only I, the fullness of good, expressing as each and all. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. And I and the Lord are one, not by decree, but by nature. Now, yes, I know the temptation here. The mind will try to seize this and say, then I am special, powerful, superior. I cannot permit that. The moment superiority arises, you have mixed I with the costume. Tear them apart again. The costume has no power of its own. This hand can neither give nor withhold. I must direct it. This tongue can neither bless nor curse. I must govern it. Therefore, I assume conscious dominion as I not over others, not over circumstance, but over thought, over feeling, over the very gate through which suggestion would enter. I stand the porter at the door of thought, not with a trumpet, but with a lamp, and the lamp is I. Where then shall we find this I? Not by thinking about it in the forehead where words are minted, not by reciting it until the mouth is dry. We will feel it where it rises, before thought can dress it, nearer than breathing, rising from the chest as a quiet fact. In a moment we will go there together, and you will discover that I is felt first, known first, and only afterward named. Be still, and know not, think that I am. Now we travel from the head to the chest. All other words come up out of the head where syllables are minted, where the tongue rehearses its doctrines, where echoes breed echoes, but I rises out of the chest closer than breathing, quieter than thought, prior to every description. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. I do not go hunting for a mystical sensation. I attend to the place from which life announces itself as presence before it becomes a sentence. The word is nigh thee, even in thy mouth and in thy heart. Not nigh as a thought you can frame, but nigh as being that is already here. Now, yes, notice the difference. If you repeat I in the head, you will hear a voice speaking to itself. You will feel the forehead buzz. You will sense the tongue itching to produce a rhythm. It is head speech. It keeps a direction, out and up. But when I is allowed to rise where it lives, it does not march. It appears. It wells up from the chest as a soft fact, as a weightless weight, as a warmth that does not burn, as a simple yes that requires no commentary. It bears its own evidence. Hush, I rest, I listen, I wait. I do not reach, I do not push, I do not decorate. I allow, and in allowing, I find that it was not I who moved to meet God, it was I as being that revealed itself where I stopped trying to think God. Why must I make this move? Because the mind can dominate concepts all day. It can bend words to its will. It can juggle synonyms with priestly flair. It can polish a phrase until it gleams and still never be silent. But the chest sense cannot be dominated by the mind without being lost. It is nearer to silence than to speech, nearer to the still small voice than to any oration. The Spirit of God hath made me, and the breath of the Almighty hath given me life. The breath that carries your life is not a metaphor. It is the gentle river by which I is discovered as presence, not postulate. He breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. I then do not use breath as a trick. I let breath show me what was always true before words. I, beneath debate. I, closer than breath. I. Now do not confuse this with stirring up a feeling. I cannot permit the personal self to take this holy nearness and make it a drama. Put up thy sword. It has to be a gentle I, not an egotistical I, not a swashbuckling I that pounds the chest and shouts slogans. This is the quiet dominion that requires no noise. It does not contract the body. It does not demand a sign. It does not claim a private power. It abides. It is meek, and it inherits the earth because it stands where the earth is already embraced in oneness. My peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth. That peace rises from the same place in which I is known before it is said. The head can counterfeit fervor. It cannot counterfeit the still authority. Therefore, I assume conscious dominion exactly here. I stand as the porter at the door of feeling, not to bar life, but to admit only the real. I let thought pass by without argument. I let sensation arise without judgment. I turn the ear of attention downward and inward, as if the hearing were in the breast itself. I rest. I listen. I wait. I do not reach. In that waiting, I am not empty. I am full without objects. I am not passive. I am awake without strain. And the sign that I am close is simple. Breath unhurried. Chest soft. Mind without the need to narrate. Be still and know that I am God. Ceases to be an instruction shouted from a sky and becomes a disclosure uttered within, without words. In a moment, we will make this recognition practicable, simple, gentle, repeatable, and testable at once. You will not need a posture. You will not need a mood. You will not need a special room. You will need only this relocation. From head speech to chest presence, from thinking I to being I. And you may prove it by evidence that does not lie. Your breath slows, your inner volume lowers, and a quiet certainty, without story and without boast, begins to establish itself. Then the word I can be breathed without effort, not to convince, but to agree. For now, make this small preparation. Turn within as though your awareness had settled behind the breastbone. Let the head grow dim, let the chest become bright, and be willing to feel I before you think it. Sit now, and let us make it simple. Sit as you are, feet on the floor, or folded as they will, hands at rest, shoulders unarmed. I will not have you fight thought. I will not have you police sensation. I stand as the porter at the door of thought, but I do not scuffle at the threshold. I simply assume my post. I rest, I listen, I wait. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Now gently let attention settle in the chest, as though the hearing of awareness were there, behind the breastbone, nearer than the rise and fall of breath. Let the first inhale come by itself. Do not take it, receive it. And on the exhale, only on the exhale, let the word I release itself as a breath more than a sound, a soft letting go rather than an assertion. Not in the head, not pushed through the lips as a slogan. Let I rise from the chest and ride out on the breath like a leaf upon a stream. Then pause. Do not command the pause. Do not manufacture stillness. Let the emptiness between breaths be as it is, and in that gentle interval, be willing not to think about being, but to be. Again, do not take the inhale. Allow it to arrive. When it turns to exhale, let I fall again tenderly, without heroics, without speed, without a wish to convince. It must be a gentle I, not an egotistical I, not a swashbuckling I. Put up thy sword. The moment you feel push, release pushing, return to allowing. He breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. We are not conjuring life. We are consenting to what is closer than breathing. Breathe out I. And in the pause, rest as the one who needs no argument. Now the mind will try a trick. It will listen for a result. It will check your pulse, ask for fireworks, measure seconds. I cannot permit that tyranny. I assume dominion by not obeying the timer in the head. I keep my post in the chest. Inhale received. Exhale I. Pause allowed. No struggle with thought. If a thought walks to the door, I greet it without engagement and let it pass by like a stranger on the road. I do not argue. I do not chase. I hold to the simplicity of breath and the softness of I. Be still and know that I am God. Not know a theory, know an immediacy. Continue this for several breaths and begin to notice the sign that you are succeeding. Your breathing slows of itself. It becomes so even, so gentle, that for a moment you almost cannot find it. Do not be alarmed. This is the evidence that authority is being transferred away from the head that narrates to the I that is. The inner volume lowers. The compulsion to think relaxes its grip. Thought remains a possibility, but it is no longer the police chief of your attention. It speaks, if it speaks, in a small voice that no longer commands. My peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth. The peace is not a mood you brood. It is the native climate of I, unveiling itself where you yielded. Hold here a little longer. Inhale received. Exhale I. Pause. And in the pause, notice that nothing is missing. You are not waiting for a visitor. You are not bargaining for a sign. You are not assembling a ladder to climb. You are abiding. Here is the interpretation, and it must be spoken clearly. This is not a technique that causes God to come. This is a doorway out of seeking, because the one syllable I breathed from the chest is not a magic word. It is the name of the one who is already here. It removes distance. It cancels the bargain. It silences the buyer and the seller in the temple. When I abides, as I thought, loses its authority because it has no separate self to impress. The seeker collapses because there is no longer a space between you and what you seek. The word is nigh thee, even in thy mouth and in thy heart. You have not added anything. You have stopped adding. You have not conquered the mind. You have ceased enlisting in its campaign. And in that ceasing, dominion begins quiet, unforced, enduring. Now let me tell you plainly why this ends seeking. Seeking presupposes distance, a seeker here and a God there, a ladder to climb, a bargain to strike, a time yet to come. But when I abides as I, distance dies. There is no there to march toward, because the one you sought stands revealed as the one who is looking. I and my Father are one, not shall be one, one. Now what is it that was seeking? A thought clothed in a name, armed with doctrines and deadlines, busy with strategies. And what remains when the thought stops? I, not the thought of I. Therefore, the very machinery of hunting collapses because the hunter dissolves into the living fact of being. Do you see the subtlety? Concepts perpetuate time. The mind declares, someday I shall arrive, someday I shall attain, someday I shall be worthy. It makes a horizon and then worships the horizon. But I is not someday. Now is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. I is the present tense of reality. The am that does not wait for your calendar. Before Abraham was, I am. The moment I is recognized where it lives, chest, breath, stillness. The mind's future falls away like scaffolding removed after the house stands of itself. The house is not postponed. The house is here. Now, yes, I know the argument that rises. If seeking ends, does devotion die? I cannot permit that misunderstanding. This does not destroy devotion. It purifies it. Seeking is the reach of the mind for what it imagines absent. Devotion is the consent of the heart to what is present. Seeking is noise. Devotion is communion. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. In spirit, which is to say, not in fantasies of a later hour. In truth, which is to say, in the nakedness of being, without the costumes of ambition. In this communion, prayer ceases to beg and begins to agree. It agrees with what is. I am. It agrees with what is everywhere the same. I here is I there, and the line between dissolves. Now what becomes of the seeker? He has no ground on which to stand, for the distance he needs has been erased. The ache that fueled him was born of a split, me versus God, me versus good, me versus life. When I is recognized as the life of this very awareness, the split cannot be maintained. The ache quiets, not by triumph, but by truth. The lantern that kept scanning the horizon turns and discovers it was lighted from within. The light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. The darkness of seeking cannot comprehend this light, because the light does not journey. It simply is. Therefore, the seeker collapses, and what remains is the seer, without an object apart from himself. This is why the gatekeeping of thought becomes possible without strain. As long as I imagine myself a traveler lacking the prize, every suggestion had leverage. It might help you get there, it whispered. Chase me. But abiding as I have nothing to chase. Thought presents its wares at the door, and I am the porter. I greet, I see, I let pass. No wrestling, no panic, no bargaining. My yoke is easy, and my burden is light, not because circumstance has promised flattery, but because identity has ceased to lend circumstance its authority. I assume my God-given dominion not with clenched teeth, but with recognition. I am that which is aware. I am not the rumor that knocks. Now, yes, question it soberly. Who was seeking 5 breaths ago? A story. Who abides when the story is set down between breaths? I. Who must maintain this? I, not the personal costume, not the swashbuckling claimant, but the gentle I that neither shouts nor sues for its own good. And as I abides, devotion becomes delight, worship becomes wordless, and time loses its tyranny. You will find that you no longer live on the promise of a future holiness. You live in the holiness that is present as I. And from this abiding, you will discover the discipline that follows naturally. To stand as the porter at the door of thought, not to manufacture peace, but to refuse every suggestion that would reintroduce the distance which I has already dissolved. Now I assume my post, I stand as the porter at the door of thought, nothing shall enter that defileth. Do you hear the authority in that? Not a strained bravado, not a clenched jaw moralism, but rightful governance grounded in identity. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. I keep it by knowing who keeps it. I do not keep it as a frightened personality trying to fence a hurricane. I keep it as I, the presence that is already here before wind, before weather, before rumor. Dominion begins with identity. If I imagine myself a bundle of reactions, I will be ruled by whatever knocks. If I know myself as I am the door, and the knocking loses its command. Therefore, I assume conscious dominion over mind and body. I stand here the porter at the door of thought, and I stand here a tiler over my mind and my body. I must maintain my God-given dominion, not as repression, but as recognition. I am that which is aware. I am not any suggestion that seeks admission. When a thought comes, it does not come with papers signed by God. It comes as an appearance at the threshold. I decide. I decide not as a tyrant, but as a steward. I let pass what bears witness to the nature of I, peace, clarity, charity, and I deny passage to the fear and the accusation that have no father in me. There shall in no wise enter into it anything that defileth. The city is consciousness. The gate is attention. The porter is I. Now let me make it practical, so that you do not admire and forget a disturbing thought approaches. Do not argue. Do not compose a sermon to chase it down the road. I cannot permit that wrestling, because wrestling dignifies the intruder. Instead, return at once to the chest. One exhale, breathe out, I, gently, from the place where I rises before it is thought. In the pause that follows, do nothing, consent to being. Let the suggestion stand outside with its hat in its hands while you remember who answers the door. Then, if action is needed, act, choose your word, make your call, wash your dish, but act from I, not from the rumor. If no action is needed, let the visitor pass by as mist that found no opening. Do this again and again across the day, not with violence, with constancy. Each time you feel yourself hooked by an opinion, a fear, an irritation, do not sharpen your sword. Put up thy sword. One exhale. I. Pause. Be. Stand therefore, not shake. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength, not in clamor and contest. In that instant, the balance of power reverses. Thought is no longer the police chief. It becomes an applicant. And you, as I, are the sole hiring authority at that door. Now, I will not pretend that this is easy at first. Long periods of practice. This is our lot. I had my long periods of practice. Sometimes suggestion still tries to put on the old uniform and bark orders. And sometimes, yes, it may get the best of me for a moment. but not for too long. I snap out of it. How? The very way I have given you. I return to the chest. I breathe out I. I stand my post. I do not debate my failure. I do not collect evidence against myself. I resume dominion. Repentance is not self-scolding. Repentance is the shift of identity from the personality that fell asleep to the I that never slept. And only that can prevent repetition, because only that changes the state of consciousness out of which experience is formed. This governance is gentle. It is not the swagger of a metaphysical policeman. It is the steadiness of a shepherd. My yoke is easy, and my burden is light, because I am no longer dragging a sack of unexamined suggestions behind me. I admit what accords with my nature, and I decline what does not, and I do so without fear, because there is no other self here to be harmed. Perfect love casteth out fear, and I am that love as being, not as sentiment. When fear knocks, it knocks at no one's door, and it finds no handle to turn. Now, yes, see the wisdom of where this leads. If I am the porter for thought, I will soon be the porter for relationship. If the right identity governs the inner gate, the outer gate will mirror it. You will find yourself refusing the old bargains of my good against thy good, because there is no rival self at the door, only the one I expressing through many forms. Therefore, as we move forward, we shall let this same I dissolve the basis of quarrel, of scarcity, of rivalry, until there is no my supply and thy supply, only the fullness of I revealed as ours. But first, keep your post. Today, this hour, this breath, exhale. I stand as porter, and let only what is of I enter in. Now hear the next inevitability of this recognition. If I is one, if there is only one self, then I am thyself. Not as sentiment, not as philanthropy dressed as superiority, as reality. We, being many, are one body in Christ, and every one members one of another. Therefore, I cannot scheme for my private corner and call that wisdom, for there is no private corner in I. There is only God's fullness as the life of all. When I abide as I, rivalry loses its air, envy its oxygen, quarrel its justification. I and my Father are one. And because I and the Father are one, I and thou are not two centers struggling in one field. We are the one, self-revealing itself as many faces, never in competition with its own being. Therefore, I must say it as plainly as it can be said, there is no my good and thy good. There is only good God appearing as all. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. Not the earth is mine against yours, but the fullness as I express. And in that fullness, no person needs rob another, flatter another, or fear another to live. My interests are your interests when I stand in I. Your welfare is my welfare, because we are not two lives with two treasuries. We are one life with one treasury, and that treasury is infinite, spiritual, forever self-replenishing, and never apportioned by fear. Give us this day our daily bread. Not give me, lest thou starve. Give us. The prayer assumes ourness, not rivalry. Let this descend from sermon to practice. A colleague is advanced. The old habit rises. Why them, not me? I cannot permit that intruder to sign my name. I return to the chest. One exhale. I. Pausa. Be. And there I look again and discover that the same I lives as that colleague and is this form. Supply has not been transferred like coins drained from my purse. Supply as I unfolding as opportunity, as timing, as wisdom. If it appears there today, it is not stolen from here. It is the same life expressing where the lens stands ready. My cup runneth over. Over for me alone? No. Over means over the brim into the saucers of all who sit at the same table of being. I then rejoice, not from piety, but from recognition. My good has appeared as thy good, and because the one good is indivisible, its showing there confirms its presence here. Apply it likewise to health. There is no my health and thy health. There is only health as I life acting as harmony. If you suffer, I suffer in appearance. Therefore, my prayer cannot be a plea for my private comfort while abandoning you to the lottery. My prayer is agreement. I here am the same I there, whole, indivisible, one God and Father of all, who is above all, and through all, and in you all. I then cease the cruel arithmetic that counts your wholeness as my loss or my recovery as your deprivation. We stand in one body. When one member rests in I, that rest blesses the whole. Here is your test, so that this does not remain a noble slogan. The next time judgment rises against neighbor, official, rival, or stranger, do not argue with the judgment. Do not try to staple sweetness over it. Return instantly to the chest. One exhale. I. Pause. B. Now ask soberly. Can this judgment remain without a sense of separation to feed it? Can it breathe when the air of rivalry is removed? Judge not, that ye be not judged, is not a threat. It is a law of consciousness. Judgment requires two. I-awareness reveals one. Stay there until the heat cools. If an action is called for, it will come as clarity without spite. If no action is called for, the judgment will fade as mist that failed to find a second self to accuse. Let me add the necessary safeguard. This is not the softness of indulgence, not an egotistical I granting amnesty to its favorites. Put up thy sword of superiority. It has to be a gentle I. And gentle does not mean weak. Gentle means unopposed in truth. And yes, now we must face the hard objection that honesty demands. What of evil, harm, injustice? Shall I wave the banner of oneness and excuse darkness? I cannot permit that misunderstanding. Oneness does not launder error into innocence. It strips error of personhood. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. There you have the key to dominion without hatred. Error as impersonal suggestion seeking outlet. Therefore, I can be firm without fury, corrective without condemnation. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. In a moment, we shall take up this impersonalization of error, so that you may stand your post in a world of appearances, and yet refuse to grant a mask the dignity of a self. For now, breathe once more, I, and let the false arithmetic of mine versus thine drain out with that breath, until only the indivisible I remains, quietly sufficient for us all. Now we must cleanse the lens through which we look at darkness, for I cannot permit you to turn truth into sentimentality on one hand or weaponry on the other. Let me repeat that error is impersonal. Do not make an evil person out of a person. Error is hypnotism, mesmerism, suggestion, mass belief, seeking outlet, never identity, never selfhood. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers. And when I accept that principle, I remove the mask without excusing the deed. The person before you is not a devil. The evil is not a self. It is an impersonal claim, knocking for admission. And I, as the porter at the door of thought, refuse to sign its entrance card. Now, yes, Hear it clearly so that your ethics remain sharp and your heart stays soft. To impersonalize error does not approve wrongdoing. It removes the poison of hatred, the myth of many selves, so that correction can be clean and protection can be wise. Be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Wise so you see through the costume of suggestion. Harmless so you do not stab the costume and call that justice. I can be firm without fury, decisive without spite. Get thee behind me, Satan, is not an insult to a man. It is the dismissal of a claim. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Is not a shrug at evil. It is a revelation that the actor is asleep under a hypnosis from which awakening, not hatred, is salvation. Here is your sequence so that practice replaces anger. First, recognize suggestion. Name it as what it is. Fear, narrative, greed, whisper, lust, impulse, revenge story, herd panic. Do not baptize it with a personal name, yours or another's. Second, refuse it entry. Stand your post. I, in this instant, assume dominion. Nothing shall enter that defileth. I am Tyler over my mind and my body. I decline to identify with this suggestion. Third, return to the chest. One exhale. I pause. B. Feel the living I rise, closer than breathing, and let the authority of that presence lower the inner volume. Fourth, act wisely in the world, but without personal venom. Speak your no. Set your boundary. Lock the door. Make the call. Move the body out of harm's reach. Do what love would do if love stood in your shoes. And love will never require hatred to protect its own. Not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit. And that spirit is not vague. It is the sober clarity of I informing your step. Apply this also to self-accusation. When memory drags you to the whipping post, do not make a devil of yourself either. The same impersonal mesmerism that tempts to act tempts to despair. Recognize the claim, unworthiness, doom, fatalism. Refuse it, entry at the door. Return to the chest. Exhale I. In the pause, accept mercy as identity, not as a favor. Then make your amends, if amends are due, not out of self-loathing, but out of love, discovering how to set things right. Repentance is not a performance of pain. It is a change of consciousness that prevents repetition. Only the state of consciousness can be externalized. And when I abides as I, the pattern that bred the act is dissolved at the root. Extend it further. A symptom appears. A pain flares. A rumor of diagnosis sweeps the room. If you grant it personhood, it becomes a tyrant in your house. Do not recognize suggestion, world belief parading as your biography. Refuse it entry as identity. Return to the chest. Exhale I. Let the breath show you the life that you are before a report speaks. Then act wisely as guided. Consult, treat, rest as one under governance, not under terror. The law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus hath made me free from the law of sin and death. Freedom does not mean recklessness. It means you are not ruled by the hypnosis of fear while you do the wise thing that love directs. Now, yes, some will ask, does this not make me naive in a rough world? On the contrary, it makes you accurate. If error is impersonal, you can address it at its level, deny it audience, deny it instruments, interrupt its channels without crucifying a neighbor or yourself. You can install a lock while blessing the one from whom you lock the door. You can testify in court without venom, You can say no and keep the heart unbroken. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. And good here is not a mood. It is I refusing to lend identity to a lie. And to anchor this beyond philosophy, we will turn our eyes outward and inward at once. The same eye that breathes you without your plotting, that knits a wound without your scheming, that opens a blossom without a committee. This eye is the presence by which suggestion is unmasked and harmony established. In a moment we shall look to the tree and to the bird and see that the rhythm governing them is the same rhythm by which you will stand your post without hatred and move through this world free, because the animating presence is one and it is I. Now lift your eyes and let the lesson stand before you without argument. Who taught the bird to cross an ocean and return to the same small limb? Where is the map? Where is the school? Who turns sap to a scent each spring and then to sweet fruit without a book of recipes? Who closes a cut in your skin while you sleep, weaving tissue with no committee and no consent from your clock? Who advances the crescent of your fingernails, grows hair in the night, conductors blood through branching miles and miles, and keeps heart and lung in their rhythm whether you laugh or weep? Not the head, not the chatter that calls itself me. These functions do not wait upon your opinions to proceed. They do not pause until a concept blesses them. They go on because life is living as them. Now I must correct the old habit that turns this into a story of a power out there that might visit if you flatter it. I cannot permit an idol called nature to take the place of the living one, nor can I let an idol called personal mind steal the credit. The same eye that breathes you grows the tree. The same eye that opens your hand in kindness spreads a wing and points a beak toward home. In him we live and move and have our being. And I do not recite that as poetry. I announce it as anatomy of being. The one life is expressing as form and function, bird, branch, breath, and that life recognized within as I is the ground and governance of all that appears. Do not mishear me as inflating a human with grandeur. It has to be a gentle I, not an egotistical I claiming mastery with a trumpet. Put up thy sword of superiority and thy sword of possession. This recognition does not make you owner. It makes you one. Not my tree, my sky, my birds, but I living as tree, as sky, as birds, and as this awareness beholding, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Therefore the fullness is not parceled into mine and thine. It is the one self revealing its own abundance everywhere at once. Here is your contemplation so that demonstration becomes daily and thought loses its crown. Go outside or look through any window. See a blade of grass daring the sun. See a leaf trembling, a cloud drifting, a bird stitching arcs through air. Return to the chest. One exhale. I pause. Be, then, without moving to the head for permission, let the heart speak in silence. I am the life of this, not as ownership, as oneness. I am the life of this grass. I am the life of that tree. I am the life in the wing and the wind that bears it. Hold it gently, without strain, without preaching to yourself. Consider the lilies, how they grow. They toil not, they spin not. Who then grows them? I. Let the answer rise where breath rises closer than breathing, and let the seeing be its own peace. Do this as you water a plant. Know that I draws the water the way I draws breath. Do it as you watch a scab lift. Know that I unknits the bandage and knits the flesh. Do it as you hear geese passing north. Know that I conducts the migration, and I is not many captains but one, presence indivisible, everywhere the same. Are not two sparrows sold for a farthing? And one of them shall not fall on the ground without your Father, not a distant overseer counting losses, but the very life in which falling and rising occur. Then gratitude will cease to be a mood you manufacture. It will be the recognition that everything you touch, see, hear, or are is I touching, I seeing, I hearing, I being. And as you dwell here, notice the quiet correction that takes place without effort. The mind that once argued for causes and chances relaxes its grip. Causation returns from superstition to intimacy. I am the vine, ye are the branches. Therefore the same life that flows in the vine flows in the branch, and the fruit is inevitable where abiding is true. This is not imagination. This is immediacy. Breathe once more from the chest. I. Let the word fall away into the living fact. Scripture ceases to be quotation and becomes respiration. He giveth to all life and breath and all things. And you know it because you are that giving as being. Abide now in this witness of nature until the whole field of vision whispers the same name, and the name is I. Now let us come to the sacred close where word yields to realization. I am that I am. Do not hold it at arm's length as a line to admire. Let it turn you about until the thinker drops and the being remains. Be still and know not think that I am God. Not a distant deity to bargain with, not a concept to polish, not I closer than your breathing, nearer than your hands and feet. The bush that burned before Moses was not an argument, it was a self-revealing. So is this. The name is not syllables, the name is presence. And the name speaks itself as you, when the mind is quieted and the chest is honest. We have walked a road together, and I will put its stones in order for your remembrance. First, I could not permit you to worship a three-letter word in your head. God as a thought is a veil, and as long as it lives there, you live there. Therefore, we strip the synonyms, deity, spirit, truth, love, not because they are evil, but because they are still words. When the stripping was complete, one word remained that cannot be removed. I, not the biographical I, not the swashbuckling I of performance, but being itself, rising from the chest, closer than breathing. Then we learn the gentle practice. Breathe out I, on the exhale only, and consent to the pause where thought loses its borrowed authority. There we assumed our rightful post as Porter and Tyler, standing dominion over thought without struggle. From that identity, we lay down the false arithmetic of my good and thy good, discovering oneself, one supply, one life. From that identity, we impersonalized error firm, without hatred, refusing to grant suggestion the dignity of selfhood, and at last we let nature preach. The same eye that breathes you grows the tree and guides the bird. In all of it, one thread. The end of seeking is the recognition of I where you stand. Now I give you your weekly assignment so that realization outlives inspiration. For 7 days, 3 times a day, take 2 or 3 minutes only. Sit or stand as you are. Return to the chest. On the exhale, breathe out. That single syllable, gently. Then let there be a pause. Do not pull the next thought from the head. Let it come if it comes. If it does not, remain. If thought knocks, do not argue. You are the porter, see it, and let it wait outside. Breathe once more. I, always on the exhale. Do not decorate it. Do not push. Let the breath slow of its own accord. That is your sign that the mind has yielded its chair to presence. Second, each day choose one living moment with nature. It may be a tree at a curb, a puddle trembling in wind, a bird on a wire, a house plant by a sink. Return to the chest, exhale I, then In silence, acknowledge, I am the life of this, not as possession, as oneness. Let the recognition be brief and real. Do not make a show of it, even to yourself. Let gratitude arise, not as a sentiment you compose, but as the fact of being one life beholding itself. And if you relapse, as the old habit claims, another hour, do not condemn yourself. I cannot permit self-accusation to masquerade as holiness. Repentance is swift. Return. One exhale. Resume your post. The porter never files charges against himself for having stepped away. He steps back and keeps the door. Again and again until again is no longer needed. Now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not after improvement. Now. Do not look for thunder. Do not audition for ecstasy. The goal here is not fireworks. It is a settled recognition, quiet, gentle, continuous. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give unto you. Abiding will feel like that unspectacular, sure, effortless as breath once you stop directing the lungs. Then devotion is no longer a reach. It is an agreement. Abide in me, and I in you. You will find that you are abiding as I, and you will discover that this is the end of seeking. For the final word is I, and the first word is I, and between them there is no distance. Therefore, be still and know I am that I am.